السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. واللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله. واللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. What is the Sharia? What is this word which has such heavy connotations when we use it in today's context? This word that when we hear it, images of war-torn countries come to our mind. This word that when we hear it, images of amputations, images of capital punishment, images of death and destruction come to mind. What is it in reality, this word Sharia, which is supposed to be honored in our religion, which is supposed to be something that brings comfort to the hearts of the people? At the time when Rasulullah ﷺ came, his society, his community was a war-torn society. It was a lawless society, a society where injustice was the norm rather than an exception. And when he ﷺ brought the Sharia, it was a light for his society, and it was a light for all of the societies Islam spread to. The Sharia was something that brought peace to the hearts of the people. It was something that brought justice into the lands where it was brought into. Yet, what is the reputation that this word has today? What's interesting is that when Rasulullah ﷺ was in the midst of his mission, his community, the Muslim community, was very small. It was very small. And the circumstances they were working under were very difficult. They were a persecuted minority community. Yet the rules and the legislations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent were designed for an empire, were designed for a larger community, were designed for a powerful community. An example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke in the ayah Baqarah, in Surah Baqarah, in the largest ayah in the whole Quran, an ayah talking about the importance of writing down trade. And if you think about it, this ayah was revealed in a society where most people were illiterate, correct? Most people were illiterate at the time of the Prophet. Even he himself was illiterate. Yet this ayah said that anytime a transaction was being made, it should be written down. It should be written down. And this seems strange when you think about the community at the time of the Prophet who were mostly illiterate. But when you understand that this Sharia was always meant for all of humanity, was always meant for wider society was always meant to spread from the east to the west, then it makes sense. Because the writing down of trade did become something important for all of human civilization. The writing down of trade did become something important for all of the lands Islam spread to, and literacy spread, and business spread, and people's lives became complicated, and they needed to fall back on the laws and commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in His Sharia to that man sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the Sharia of Allah was always meant for all of mankind, and it was something that would bring honor, justice, and beauty to a land. Yet today, that's not the implication that comes to our mind when we think of the word Sharia. And some of our brothers and sisters have this impression that how people view us isn't important. How wider society views us as Muslims isn't important. How the rest of the world views us and the Sharia isn't important, because we know that we have the truth. They say, we know we have the truth, so why is it important if the rest of the world doesn't approve of us, doesn't have the best image of us? But when we look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we see that this isn't the right mentality to have. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam was asked why he didn't execute the leader of the hypocrites, Abdullah ibn Ubay. He was asked sallallahu alayhi wasallam, why don't you execute this man who has caused so much pain to the Muslims? This man who has caused so much pain to the Muslims. This man who has tried to sabotage the Muslims. This man who has hurt the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was asked, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, why don't you execute this man? And he sallallahu alayhi wasallam responded that he didn't want people saying that Muhammad executes his followers. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he didn't want, he was concerned as to the image, the public image, the marketing of Islam. And why would he not be? If you have the truth, we have the truth, and we want the world to share with us in this truth. So why would we not care about our image and how the rest of the world sees us? We want to invite the rest of the world to this message. So we need to care about how the rest of the world sees us. We need to care about how we come across, how we carry ourselves, how our Sharia and how the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seem to the rest of the world. So now the discussion pivots into what is the Sharia? What's the definition of the Sharia? What does it mean? What does this word mean? And when we look at Quran translations, when we look at word for word translations from the Arabic to the English, there are multiple words in the Quran that are used interchangeably, and they're all translated in a somewhat shallow manner. So the Quran uses the word Sharia, and it uses the word Deen, and it uses the word Millah, all interchangeably. And when we look at famous English translations of the Quran, these words are translated as religion. Deen, the word Deen is translated as religion. And this suffices for the purposes of an English translation of the Quran. However, it doesn't do justice to the depth and the complexity of that word. It doesn't do justice to the word Deen, and it doesn't do justice to the word Sharia, and it doesn't do justice to the word Millah. So we look at how our scholars have translated, have explained, have defined this word. And one of our scholars, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, translated the word Deen as stipulations from God that a person uses their mind to follow. Stipulations from God that push a person who uses their mind to follow these stipulations in order to reap the benefits. It's a long, wordy translation, it's a long, wordy explanation, but it captures all the different aspects of the word Deen, of the word Sharia. And of the most important of these aspects is the phrase, uses their mind. Because when we think of the Sharia, a lot of the time, we think of totalitarian, authoritarian systems, where a central authority, where one sheikh imposes his understanding on you or on society as a whole. That's the picture people get when they think of the word Sharia. They think of an oppressive system where one sheikh imposes his understanding of Sharia onto the rest of society, and the rest of society hates it, but they have no say. That's the image that comes to people's mind. But in reality, an essential part of following the Sharia is that one does it of their own will. One uses their mind to come to the conclusion that Islam is true, that what the Prophet ﷺ brought is true, and that I should follow these stipulations from God for my own benefit. I should follow these commands from Allah for my own benefit. So part of teaching people the Sharia is teaching people that Islam is true, and that what the Rasulullah ﷺ came with is true, and that we should follow these things out of our own desire. It should not be imposed upon us. La ikraha fi deen. There is no compulsion in deen. So when you force, or when one forces a person to follow the Sharia, in reality they are not following the Sharia. When, for example, a parent forces their child to pray without teaching them the deeper reason as to why they should pray, why they should want to pray, why they should rush to prayer, why praying is only going to be beneficial for the child, why the child will benefit in this life and the next life. But the parent ignores all of that, but only forces onto the child that you must pray because I said so. Then the parent in reality is not teaching the child the Sharia. The parent in reality is just imposing his own will onto the child. That's all it is. When we don't teach our students, when we don't teach ourselves, when we don't teach our younger generations why the Sharia is true, why we should follow it, what benefits we get out of following the Sharia, then in reality we are not learning the Sharia. We are just learning a list of rules and commands. When we ourselves only follow the Sharia because it's what our parents taught us, but we have no understanding as to the benefits that will come if we follow this command, we have no appreciation for the truthfulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and for the religion that he came with, then in reality, are we truly following the Sharia? We might be, but there's a deficiency in it. There's a deficiency in our following of the Sharia. There's a deficiency in it. And another way of looking at the word Sharia is that in Arabic, it also means the path to water. It also means the path to water. And that captures the thematic value of the Sharia, of following the Sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In a society where water is scarce and water is the source of life, and the path to water is going to be well known in that society. The path to water is going to be a path that's well trod. Everybody in that society knows that path. Why? Because everybody walks it every day to get water, to drink, to get water for household tasks, for cleaning, for so on and so forth. That path in that society, it's going to be a well-known path. It's going to be a path people find joy in traversing. It's going to be a path people look forward to traversing. Why? Because they know life-giving water is at the end of this path. And it's also going to be a path that one doesn't have to be forced to tread. Nobody's going to force, if you're in a society where water is scarce, nobody's going to force you to tread that path. You're going to tread it yourself because you want the water. You're thirsty. You want the water. Your family and your children need water. You're going to tread that path. You need it clean. You need it for household tasks. You need it for cooking, so on and so forth. You're going to tread that. You're going to tread that path out of your own will. Nobody's going to impose it on you, and you're going to do so with a smile on your face, inshallah. And this is the same mentality we should have when it comes to following the Sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because it doesn't take us to water. It takes us to something much better. It takes us to the pleasure and the rida of Allah. It takes us to eternal bliss in Jannah. It takes us to the companionship of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It takes us to peace and serenity in this life. It takes us to health. It takes us to wealth. It takes us to good family ties. It takes us to stronger communities. It takes us to joy. It takes us to love. That's the path of the Sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we see a path and when we hear of a path like that, is there any doubt in our minds that we will willingly follow that path? Is there any doubt in our minds that we will need nobody whipping us on that path in order to traverse it? No, we'll traverse it willingly. We'll traverse it with a smile on our faces. And that's the mentality we should have when it comes to our desire to follow the Sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And one of the most common complaints of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is that previous generations, previous ummahs, they changed this path of Allah. They changed this path. They changed the path to water, they altered it. such that it no longer led to water, now it led off a cliff. The path that once led to life-giving water, they changed it. They changed the signs, and now it no longer leads to water, it leads off a cliff. It leads to damnation. It leads to pain. It leads to broken communities. It leads to a lack of peace in the heart. It leads to losing the pleasure of Allah. It leads to losing eternal bliss in Jannah. That's what previous generations, that's what previous ummahs did. And when explaining why the previous ummahs did this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave a simple explanation. بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. Arrogant competition between themselves. They didn't change the path of Allah unknowingly. They didn't change the sharia of Allah unknowingly. They were scholars of the sharia. They knew the sharia better than myself and yourself. They knew what they were doing. They changed the path of Allah. They changed the sharia of Allah knowingly. They changed it willingly. Why? Out of competition, arrogant competition between themselves. For some ulterior motive, for some small price, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. They changed it for some status. They changed it for some wealth. They changed it for some significance in the community. They changed it for some clout. They changed it for insignificant matters. They changed the path to life-giving water, and they changed it to a path that leads you off a cliff. That was previous generations. So the question arises, is this something we still have to worry about today ourselves? Is this something we still have to worry about as the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that He will preserve the sharia of Rasulullah, is this something we have to worry about? And the answer is yes. We can't change and we won't change the sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam like how previous generations changed it on a global scale, on a collective scale. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that He will preserve His ummah. However, we can change it on a small scale. We can change it in our own individual lives. And how do we change it? When we take the sharia of Allah and we twist it for our own ulterior motives. When we take the sharia of Allah and we twist it for our own benefit, for our own small prices, for our own arrogant competition between ourselves. What does that mean? When a father, for example, oppresses his child, and when the child asks for his right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that he has, and the father takes an ayah or a hadith and he twists it and he uses it for his own ulterior motives and he throws it in the face of his child. That's changing the deen of Allah. When a child does the same to a parent, when a child disrespects a parent, regardless of the high status Allah has promised them in His sharia, and the child takes an ayah or a hadith from the books of sunnah, and he takes it and he twists it for his own ulterior motives and he throws it at the face of his father. That's changing the deen of Allah for ulterior motives. Spouses can do these to each other. When a spouse oppresses another spouse, and when that spouse complains, the other spouse takes a hadith or an ayah from the Quran, twists it and throws it in the face. That is changing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A teacher can do it to a student. When a teacher oppresses a student, doesn't give them their rights, and takes an ayah or a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, takes it, twists it, corrupts it, and throws it in the face of that student, that's changing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a small price. And so that path that was once leading to life-giving water, we've corrupted it. We've corrupted it. We've adjusted the signs. We've lost the path. We've lost the way. We won't do it on a collective scale. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that He will preserve the sharia of His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But we're not concerned about the collective level. We're concerned about our own selves. We're concerned about our own Jannah and Jahannam. We're concerned about our own lives and how we treat those, our families and our loved ones and so on. That's what we're concerned about. So ultimately, we should be concerned about, are we doing justice to the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we doing justice, or are we taking it, corrupting it, and changing it for our own ulterior motives? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people that act upon His sharia in the correct way. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. When we think of the Sharia of Allah, many of us we think that it's difficult. Many of us we think that attaining Jannah is something difficult. It's something that's an uphill battle. It's something that takes a Herculean effort. It's something that's an immense task. It's something that only a few of us will succeed in and the rest of us will burn in hell. That's the idea that we have sometimes when you think of the Sharia of Allah. And this is a question that some of us have. We ask, why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so difficult to attain Jannah? Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so difficult to attain Jannah? Why are there so many things that are forbidden? Why is there so many paths to hell and seemingly so few paths to Jannah? Why is that the case? But in reality, that is not the case. That's us doing injustice by the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the shuyukh was once asked a question of this sort. He was asked, Ya Shaykh, how come Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's almost, the student was asking, Ya Shaykh, it almost feels like Allah is waiting behind a corner, waiting for me to make a mistake, to jump out and catch me and throw me into the hell. That's what it feels like. The child felt like the Sharia of Allah, this Sharia which should have been a source of light and a source of peace and a source of justice, he felt that like that Sharia was repressive. That Sharia was doing nothing. It wasn't a path to water, to life-giving water. In the mind of this student, that Sharia was a path to burning in hell. That's the image of the Sharia that he had. But the Shaykh responded with an analogy. He said, child of mine, imagine a university setting. A university setting, and you have all the different optional courses there. And so you look through the optional courses and you see one. This one course is known by the entire university to be the easiest course ever, to be the easiest course available, to be the easiest class one can take. There has never been a failed student in this course. That's how easy it is. And so you pick it, so a person picks that class, and they come, and the benchmark for passing is on the floor. It's the bare minimum. There's very little asked from them. But the student doesn't even bring that much. The student fails in even bringing that much. And so they fail that class. The easiest class available, the easiest course available, and the student fails that class. Out of nothing but their own arrogance, laziness, take a pick of whatever vice. That vice was the source of them failing this class. And the Shaykh said that, oh my child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is softer to us than that professor is to his students. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the test of life easy. In reality, He has made the test of life easy. In many cases, many of us growing up, we've only ever heard about the ways we're going to burn in hell from our local shuyukh and our elders. We've only ever heard about how we're going to burn in hell because we've done this and that and this and that and this and that. We've only ever heard of those narrations. We've only ever heard of that side of the deen. But in reality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made attaining His pleasure and attaining His forgiveness extremely easy. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives an example illustrating this point. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that a man will come on the Day of Judgment. He will come on the Day of Judgment and he will have 99 scrolls filled with all of his evil deeds. 99 scrolls, and a single one of them goes for as far as the eye can see. 99 scrolls filling the heavens, and in those scrolls there's nothing but all of the evil he's done in this life. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, do you deny any of these events? Have my scribes lied when they were transcribing your actions? And the slave tells him no. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, do you have any good deeds to your name that you can bring forth today? And the slave says no. And the slave feels like he's lost all hope, and the slave feels like there is nothing for him, and that his position in Jahannam has been set. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds Himself, and He says, no, you do have a good deed. And today there is no oppression. Today everything will be brought forth. And so a little slip of paper is brought forth, and on that one slip of paper is the words, La ilaha illallah. Nothing but the words, La ilaha illallah, on a little slip of paper, and that's placed on one side of the scale. And the 99 scrolls filled with evil deeds, filling the heavens, is placed on the other side of the scale. And it's not even a competition, it's not even a question. That little slip of paper with the words La ilaha illallah completely outweigh all of the evil deeds that was written for that slave. And this is the example of the ease with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made attaining His pleasure. This is the example, the similitude, the parable that's brought forth explaining how easy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made attaining Jannah. Understand that by you sitting here today, that inshallah you are a person of Jannah. Why? Because your greatest good deed, the best thing about you, the crowning jewel upon you is your belief in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So let us be optimistic about the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us take that life-giving path to water and let us take it with a smile on our faces. Let us work on the public image that we've given the Sharia of Allah. Let us do justice by this amazing Sharia that we all have. Let us rejoice in the light that we have within ourselves. Let us rejoice in the fact that we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. اللهم صل على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى سائر الصحابة والتابعين وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم ثبتنا على الإسلام. اللهم نور قلوبنا بنور الإيمان. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. عباد الله رحمكم الله. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله تعالى أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله